Welcome everybody to the Hidden Gems in Healthcare Environmental Health Advocate Program. My name is Christina. I work at the UCLA Career Center, and I would like to welcome Katherine Mcnamara from California State University, Northridge, to introduce her program.
Okay. All right. I have some slides I'm going to share. There. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Great. Okay, so I'm from the CSUN, as we're known, Department of Environmental and Occupational Health. We actually have, we're the second largest public university in California, second to UCLA. So we're right in the San Fernando Valley. And we have the largest accredited training program in environmental health in the country, which is surprising to many people. We have a couple hundred undergrads, and every year in our master's cohort, 20 or 30 master's candidates. And our master's program is primarily at night. It is, most of our master's candidates are working, and they're working in the field. And we have a large adjunct faculty, in addition, kind of a small full-time faculty, but a large adjunct faculty. Many of our adjunct faculty are alumni of our program, and they're working in the field. So there's a lot of opportunity for cross-pollination there, and a lot of great networking that happens for internships. And we have a pretty high job placement rate. So our graduates tend to excel at getting these entry-level positions and working their way up in public health departments and in the private sector. So let's talk a little bit about, I'll tell you more about our courses and our program at the end. But right now, let's hear a little bit more about the field of environmental health. It's a little bit specialized. We cover things like foodborne illness. We talk about air pollution, indoor air quality, water quality. We cover solid waste, hazardous material management, and also to some degree, wastewater and stormwater pollution prevention programs. So all of the ways that humans impact the environment, and then toxins in the environment, how they impact humans and public health. So that's kind of our niche. We place a lot of our graduates in state and local health departments, local water districts. We have a lot of positions in Southern California in the local air pollution control district. And we have placed students in the state and federal EPA programs. We also have alumni working for environmental consulting firms, working in EH&S departments in the private sector. So this is a growing field, and with the pandemic and climate change and other kind of pressing environmental issues, there continues to be a need to specialize and diversify in our training. We're going to expand into emergency management as well. And so these are just some of the job titles for our graduates: working as health inspectors, wastewater treatment plant engineers or operators, communicable disease investigators, and these are some of the traditional science kind of roles: toxicology, air quality scientists, industrial hygienists, and hazardous waste managers, to name a few. This is an overview of some of our courses and the topics we cover, but I'm going to show you a list of classes for the Master of Science degree at the end. So I think I'll breeze through some of this. But I thought I would show you, some of these photos are a little dated, but this is an idea of some of the, this is an applied health science field. And so let me show you a little bit about the work that some of our graduates are doing. Okay. So in terms of communicable diseases, we have a pretty strong training in microbiology and toxicology in our department. And then we have our students take epidemiology in the health science department. So working on communicable disease prevention program during the pandemic, we had people doing contact tracing, supporting the rollout of the vaccination programs, enforcing COVID protocols in different places of employment. And we also have people doing health education and health promotion activities in that role as well. We have an entry-level position into a lot of our local health departments as a health inspector. So an environmental health inspector does restaurant inspections. They check water quality, drinking water quality, and they ensure that public swimming pools are meeting the public safety standards. And so this is a way for people to be out there in the community enforcing some of these health standards. And during the pandemic, as I mentioned, their role really expanded to ensure that there was good enforcement of the COVID protocols out in these kind of local businesses, and that we were enforcing the local health ordinance that was issued by our Department of Public Health. We saw with Flint, Michigan, that even though we have a good program in place for monitoring and testing our drinking water supply, that there are occasional hiccups in that process. And so this has become a big issue. Our decaying infrastructure in many of our urban centers is vulnerable to lead contamination under some of the similar processes that were experienced by the residents of Flint, Michigan. So this has been a real wake-up call for us to give some attention back to safe drinking water, which was a program that we thought was kind of up and running and didn't need ongoing maintenance. And then there's measures in place, hopefully, to ensure there's not cross-contamination between wastewater and our clean water supply. So that's another role for our local health inspectors. We have wastewater treatment and the engineering and science behind that, and then the monitoring and enforcement of the discharge standards for it is kind of an area of specialization in this field. So it's critical to our public health infrastructure to ensure that we don't have releases of contaminated wastewater from our urban areas. And I think we all were probably aware that there was a unanticipated sewage release from the Hyperion plant a month or so ago. And that's the big plant at the end of the runway at LAX. And so there was a no swimming advisory published for some of our beaches in the area until that situation got resolved. But there was a lot of work going on behind the scenes of monitoring beach water quality. And then in the facilities themselves, in the wastewater treatment facilities, it's an ongoing struggle in some ways. And there are issues with sometimes overflows of stormwater that can make this kind of a tricky process to maintain and ensure that there's no unanticipated exposures there. And then stormwater pollution prevention. So this has been a growing area in our California regulatory arena, where we're trying to implement better pollution prevention controls in our urban stormwater runoff. We live in a coastal community here in Southern California, and so industries, certain kinds of industries are required to do their own stormwater monitoring, and then some local municipalities are installing some pollution prevention controls. So this is another area that's kind of been growing, and California's really shown some leadership. And I would say that some of the, like the city of Santa Monica and some of the coastal communities in Southern California have shown leadership in that area as well. And all of this translates into improved ocean water quality. So making sure that we maintain a basic level of public health prevention at our beaches so people can swim and recreate in the, on our beaches. It's a big priority in Southern California. Solid waste management is another area of specialization, I would say. So especially with this push towards sustainability, trying to increase the amount of our waste stream that can be reused and recycled, and including compostables, developing food waste diversion programs. All of this can have a big future impact in terms of minimizing the amount of landfill, which in turn helps eliminate sources of groundwater contamination and sources of methane gas from landfilled waste. So this is another growing area of our field. And we do have a new course in sustainability in our graduate program that helps look at some of these solid waste management strategies. Biomedical waste and biosafety in the research and the biotech industry is another area of specialization. So this is, another kind of job opportunity available to our graduates. Waste management and hazardous waste response is another area. So we have a whole course devoted to this topic, and at the end you get a certificate that helps you be more marketable in your job search, because it is an EPA requirement to work on any kind of site cleanup, do oil spill cleanup or anything like that. So it's a certificate that we offer to our students who are who have successful completion of this course. And then managing underground storage tanks safely, in addition to all kinds of hazardous materials management. There's a whole, you may not be aware, but there's a whole area of expertise in this area that's typically housed within the county fire departments. And so the hazmat teams in the fire department, and they also call them the CUPA inspectors. We have a whole group of grad students right now working as CUPA inspectors for Ventura County. And they're responsible for all of the chemical storage, enforcing the chemical storage regulations, inspecting businesses that generate hazardous waste, and making sure that they're complying with all the EPA regulations for the safe management and disposal of those materials. And then one facet of this is ensuring that underground storage tanks, typically fuel tanks, this is a picture of a big tank installation project at a gas station. So there needs to be leak detection, monitoring equipment. They need to reconcile their inventory to make sure there's no releases that would impact soil or groundwater. And so that's a whole area of specialization for the CUPA program as well. Okay, and then pest management. So pests are disease vectors, as we know. Since the kind of explosion of West Nile virus, mosquito abatements programs has been a big area of specialization in local health departments. Also, there's been childhood asthma has been on the rise. And so There's been a focus on looking at asthmagens that are products of pest infestations in public housing projects. And so this is a whole area of environmental health inspectors that's important and can really help protect vulnerable populations. And I was talking a bit about the vector control programs as well. So it sounds great to focus on mosquito abatement programs, but making sure that we don't overcorrect on that and have unintended exposures to pesticides as part of a vector control program. So there's a interplay between those, eliminating the pests and making sure that you don't have unanticipated exposures from the pesticides. So pesticide safety is an important component of any vector control program. And then other aspects of housing include lead paint poisoning prevention programs. So every local health department has funding from the CDC to ensure that children in particular are protected against lead exposure, and lead paint in public housing has been a big source of that. And so that's a combination of health education, outreach, and intervention. And it's done in collaboration with the CDC, as I mentioned, and also our state health department, which is responsible for reviewing blood lead levels that are collected as part of well child programs in local pediatricians' offices. And so that's a big coordinated program that's running with cooperation between state and federal and local public health entities. And then indoor air quality. So occupational health is a whole area of focus, particularly in our undergrad program, but maintaining good indoor air quality, ensuring that there's no hazardous exposures from the indoor environment. We spend 90% of our time indoors as adults. And so ensuring that we're using green building materials, for example, that's been a big push and in terms of improving indoor air quality. Also minimizing exposures during COVID, during wildfire season, and then making sure that with climate change, we are able to minimize energy demand, but also improve the quality of the indoor environment. That's kind of a growing area in our field. All right. This is a list of the course offerings in our Master of Science program. So we have a generalist class that covers many of these topics. Here that we have kind of a management class. We have a course reviewing peer-reviewed literature. Every year it's a topic that helps support a conference that our program puts on. I teach exposure assessment. You get some hands-on experience with the sampling instruments there and looking at some of the research that's being done to assess environmental and occupational exposures. I also teach research design and methodology. So I teach applied research to our graduate students every year. And that's a year-long kind of case study project that people engage in. And then we also have advanced training in toxicology, environmental epidemiology, risk assessment. We have a really good ergonomics class if you're interested in injury prevention. We have a sustainability class and some other kind of program management offerings as well. Every year, our department puts on a one-day technical symposium, and we get continuing ed credits for that from some of the local professional organizations. And so it's a great time for our alumni to come back and see the faculty, meet some of the new students, and the students present posters every year. And then the campus has a C symposium, which is more of a research symposium. And this is an example of my research methods class presenting a research project that they did based on some new environmental justice legislation that's being rolled out by our local air pollution control district. So we were really looking at some of the demographic factors that were present in some of these areas of concern that were identified as being pollution burdened by the local air pollution control district. So here's a link to our department website here. And this is a YouTube video that we put together where you get to see a few more of our faculty faces and students. And we're right here in Southern California, so we would love to meet with you. You can set up an appointment for advising over Zoom, or you can come on down to campus. We're getting more and more back in person on campus in the spring. I'll put this link in the chat before I go. And that's everything I had to say, unless you guys have questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation. And if you have any questions about this program, please feel free to put it in the Q&A. So in the interest of time, I'm gonna ask Ose and Zareen to join us because I really want them to be able to share their background and their career journey so far. Because Ose is a current graduate student in the environmental health program at the UCLA Fielding School of Public Health. So Ose and Zareen, if you want, please, you can unmute and open up your cameras. And Katherine, if you, yeah, you can.
Sorry.
No problem. And if you can, feel free to introduce yourself. So.
Sure, I'll go ahead and go first. Hi, everyone. So my name is Zareen Amin, and I graduated from the AHS program with a concentration in industrial hygiene in 2020. For my internship, I did my internship at Liberty Mutual Insurance, and then I transitioned into a full-time position as a risk control consultant, and that's where I'm currently at right now.
Thank you so much. Ose, would you like to say a few words?
Hi, I'm Ose. I'm a second year MPH student in the Environmental Health Sciences Department. For my field studies internship requirement, I worked with a researcher in the Fielding School of Public Health, and we studied environmental exposures and how they can cause Parkinson's disease.
Thank you so much for being here, first of all, for sharing your career journey with us today. My first question is the one that I always get from students who are in career exploration mode. How do I make sure that this is the right field for me? And when I did a research for the environmental health advocate, I noticed that in this field, people come from all academic backgrounds, engineering, public health, communications even. So how did you decide that this is the right field for you? Ose, would you like to start? Because you're still in school.
Okay. For me, I'm from Nigeria, and it's a developing country in West Africa. And I went to med school there, and I also had to practice for a year. So I saw firsthand how the environment has effect on health, because we had a lot of infectious diseases and also bad diet, lack of exercise, and basically exposure to chemicals that people really shouldn't be exposed to. So seeing how the health system wasn't very equipped to treat these illnesses, I thought the best way to go about it will be to actually just prevent these things in the first place. So that was my major reason why I decided to go into this program.
Thank you. Zareen?
So I had a pretty tumultuous path. So I graduated with a biology degree, And I originally wanted to go into research. So I was really into ecology research. I did a lot of it in my undergrad, and then I realized that there's no jobs for that easily. So I took a different path and started doing biomedical research. Realized that I hated it because I didn't like that I was, first of all, not treated very well as a lower, quote unquote, lower rung worker. And secondly, I just didn't like that I didn't have as much human interaction as I would like. So I ended up finding industrial hygiene, which focuses a lot on working with people and advising them on safe work practices and kind of advocating for themselves. And it allowed me to work with people, and it kind of was a really good marriage of the two things that I really enjoy. So that's kind of how I ended up in this program. And I'm a consultant now, so I work with people every day.
Yeah, that's about sums it up. A lot of students come in because they are searching for something that suits them. A lot of people come in because of personal experiences that shape their choices. So thank you for sharing. So what are some of the things that you most enjoy or anticipate to enjoy about this line of work?
Probably just working in various industries. So today I just went out to a yogurt manufacturer and I just learned about how yogurt is made. And a couple of weeks ago, I went to another box manufacturer and their sole purpose is to just manufacture boxes. So just the learning aspect of it is what I really enjoy. It keeps things fresh. It keeps things really interesting for me every day.
Jose?
For me, I guess one of the biggest things is also learning how the kind of things I experienced back home are also relevant here, like how we see that some people are disproportionately affected by environmental exposures. And it's just eye-opening to see that it's not limited to just where I'm from. It happens in a lot of places.
I think we arrived to my second question that's least popular usually is, what are some of the challenges that you face in your line of work? And I'm pretty sure that sometimes it's hard to come up with solutions to problems that are affecting millions of people, but what are some of the challenges of your specific line of work?
I would say sometimes it's really difficult because technically in my job description, I'm not supposed to be doing like workers' rights type of stuff. So, I do see, certain lines of work that I go visit that I'm seeing some poor treatment and just the way some of upper management is speaking to their subordinates or speaking about them. And I have to really maintain that focus on the actual other job that I have to do of insurance and mitigating that risk. But that worker rights piece is sometimes missing and something that I can't really sometimes explicitly state to some of my customers because they just don't want to hear it. So just working with difficult customers as a whole is a really big challenge for me. Otherwise, there are some customers who I do work with who are really focused on wanting to make their workers' work lives just way more enjoyable. So that part is good, but definitely some challenges with trying to convince some customers to change some of their processes to kind of incorporate employee feedback to make their lives a lot easier.
Thank you.
I would say pretty much getting people to accept how the environment can be affected by the things we do. For example, like our habits leading to climate change, and seeing that there are so many people who don't believe in it, people who are not willing to change anything about it. And there really isn't much you can do about it. So that part can be depressing sometimes, but I guess I just keep hoping that it gets better.
Yeah, I think we all hope that. And hopefully with more professionals in the field, we will be able to achieve the goals that are set out to improve the environment as a whole. So what are some of the qualities that you think it's important for students to have or develop in order to be successful in this line of work?
Be really open to asking questions, and also be willing to admit that you don't know some things, because your job isn't to know everything. And I'm still learning that. When I work with customers, they ask me a question, I have no idea what the answer is. And basically just recently, I've just been able to tell them, hey, I don't know the answer, but I can get back to you on that. So just being able to admit that you don't know everything. And I think that also makes you more human. And I think that makes you more approachable as well.
In addition to that, I would say, at least for the graduate school part of it, time management is important in order to like divide your time equally between all the classes you have to do, or your research, or even extracurricular activities.
Now, if we talk about graduate school, how did you decide amongst all the great opportunities of which school or which program to apply to, and how many schools did you consider before you settled on UCLA's program?
I think I applied to 6 or 7, but when it came down to it, I had just 2 that I really wanted to go to in the end. For me, what worked was I got like an email from my advisor now, and it was a personal reaching out. So I guess that made me feel at home with UCLA. And even before I had agreed to come into the program, they had a one-on-one meeting with me and, discussed how my path would be and the kind of things I will be doing. And yeah, just right from then, I felt that the faculty, the staff, and other students were supportive. So that's still the deal for me.
Thank you for sharing that. Zareen, how did you decide where to go to study?
Well, I applied to about 4 schools. I got into 3, and UCLA was one of them. I was specifically interested in industrial hygiene, and I don't know if anyone knows much about official industrial hygiene programs, but there's very few in the country. So, and just having UCLA being on that list and having that name recognition attached to UCLA was a really big seller for me. They also had like a really generous scholarship program, so I was able to go to this top-notch school and have my tuition paid for and get a great education and have access to this great network.
Great. Okay, so what type of activities did you engage in prior to applying for graduate school, just to make sure that the right field, that this is the right field for you? I think, Ose, you mentioned that back in your country, Nigeria, you were exposed to some of the things, but were there anything that you particularly chose to do to make sure that this is something you would like to do in the future?
Most of it were like just things I had to do based on what my occupation was. But also in my free time, I would volunteer for like orphanages or the geriatric center at the hospital I worked at. And I think that might have helped my application. It also helped like my own personal experiences. So nothing outside of those things, but I think they were helpful.
Thank you. Zareen? Since you had such a specific interest, what did you do to make sure that that's the right place for you?
I think for me, I was kind of in an advantageous situation because I did work for about 4 years after my undergrad. So it really gave me a lot of time to kind of think about what I wanted to study and pursue. And just having work experience in general on your resume, I feel like for any school, especially UCLA, is really, really important. And the type of work I was doing was within the realm of public health. So that was really useful for me. And I did do some volunteer activities as well with different organizations in the city I lived in before. So I was able to attach that to my resume and kind of really show that, okay, I have that quantitative background and I also can interact with individuals and just be able to be open to working with community-oriented organizations.
Thank you. And my last question is that if you could give one advice to students interested in environmental health, what would that be? What would you have said to your younger self now in retrospect? What to pay attention to, what to try?
Don't be afraid to network. LinkedIn is an excellent tool. Even if you don't have that much stuff on your LinkedIn, you can always type in some search of whatever you're interested in within the realm of environmental health, and you can reach out and see if you have connections with anyone, or you could just cold call people through LinkedIn. I think that's really helpful. It does also build up, even if they don't answer, it does build up some confidence in how to interact with people professionally, which I think is really excellent, especially when you're graduate school. You do a lot of that and you're going to have to do that throughout your career.
Jose, what would be your advice?
I think it's kind of similar to what Zareen said, but yeah, it's somewhere along the lines of being open to volunteering as much as you can and just taking up little jobs that show up or pop up from time to time that are related to the program you want to go into. I think it's just, it's like a first step to getting your feet wet.
Great advice. We keep saying that to students too. So we have one student in attendance, Katherine Mears. Do you have any questions for our panelists, whether it's about the program or Serene or Ose? Feel free to unmute if you want or type it in the chat. All right, I guess not. So I will thank you all for taking the time to joining me. And I will share this recording with our students who couldn't make it. And please let me know in the future if I can do anything for you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. And this concludes our programming for Hidden Gems in Healthcare, Environmental Health Advocate. I hope you enjoyed the information that was shared with you today. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at the Career Center, and we'll be happy to assist any way we can. Thank you so much for coming today.